Hello, my name is Evan Cardinal. I'm a political science and international relations co-major and a theater minor here at Albright College. I collaborated with Dr. Nathan Hensroth in the political science department to study the empirical effects of gender, participation rates, and legislative career outcomes of members in the European Parliament, the legislative body of the European Union. With plenty of skepticism on the legislative efficacy of the European Parliament, or EP, we first asked the general questions: should the EP be considered a viable political arena for women? In other words, can women effectively demonstrate political significance where they have upward mobility and can serve a key role in the legislative decision-making process? Secondly, we ask, is there a gendered skew between active participation rates of men and women in the EP? And thirdly, we ask is how and where do these participation rates intersect with legislative career outcomes, which is a previously understudied topic in the literature canon. Currently, the EP has reached relative gender parity as 40.4% of the total membership comprise of women as of the latest session in 2019, which is an exponential increase from the 17% of women deputies in 1979. However, this increase in quantity does not necessitate political significance, as scholars have debated. Scholars have shown that there is a symbolic, even more descriptive representation of predominantly older white women who do not have an impact on the decision-making processes of the legislator. Recent scholarship has mounting evidence suggesting otherwise, in which younger, more ethnically diverse women are an indispensable part of legislating and influencing debate in the EP, encapsulated by this Phillips quote. Progressive and static ambition define some motivations that can help us understand the legislative career outcomes of MEPs. Progressive ambition refers to politicians who view their current positions as being of lower prestige in their pursuit of seeking higher, more prestigious elections and offices. Static politicians, on the other hand, maximize their influence in their current positions by climbing the legislator's internal hierarchy and expanding the policy authorities of those institutions. Now, these sort of definitions lend themselves to the career path typologies and the foundational research of Susan Scarrow, who's pictured to the right. She defines three specific categories, being EP careerists, who look to gain seniority and access to key leadership positions in the EP, domestic MEPs, who view their time in the EP as stepping stones to build a political resume for higher office in first order national elections, and dead end deputies, who are close to retirement. Van Geffen expands Susan Scarrow's foundational research in including former national politicians whose career at the national level was robust but came to an end, as well as one-off MEPs whose short term in the MEP is explicated by their lack of political experience or aims to pursue political experience after the parliament. The literature leads us to formulate these three hypotheses. The first being women MEPs will participate more actively than men. Second, that women MEPs with more active participation rates will be more likely to pursue or return to national politics. And third, that older MEPs will tend to participate less regardless of gender. To test these hypotheses, we created an original dataset on Microsoft Excel comprising of information of over 400 MEPs spanning 7 key EU states during the 7th legislative session of the EP from 2009 to 2014. Our dependent variable of participation is defined as the rate of attendance and number of written and oral questions posed at plenary meetings during this time. To statistically test these relationships, we run 4 distinct regression models, both linearly and quadratically, on RStudio, Blue Sky, and Stata. Our findings are summarized in Tables 1 and Table 2. In Table 1, we see the comparison between participation percentages of men and women MEPs, and we see that women have the slight edge in average participation at 84.78% to men's 82.33%. However, we see that there's really no difference between the two in consideration to our standard deviations, meaning we can't definitively say that women actively participate more than men in this sample. In our regression analysis, we see an interesting relationship between the return national variable and our dependent variable of participation. We had hypothesized a positive relationship, but as we can see throughout the 4 models, it's actually a negative relationship that's statistically significant in all 4 models, which means that as MEPs participate more, they're less likely to return to national politics. Another interesting finding comes in our 4th model, which looks specifically at women MEPs. And we had hypothesized that regardless of gender, age will have a negative effect on participation. And we see this sort of negative effect playing out here. However, we see that it's not statistically significant in terms of women. And we'll see that a little more clearly on our next slide in our graph. Here in Figure 1, we see a steady decline of participation among men MEPs as their age increases, which is what we expected to find. What we didn't expect here is in Figure 2 when we're looking at women MEPs, and we see, it almost looks linear here, and we see this all of this sort of gray clouding here is the sort of variance in this, and this really shows that it's really not statistically viable, and we really can't conclude anything about the vote participation for women in regard to age and participation. Table 3 summarizes our hypotheses and their relationships to our findings to see if they were supported or not supported after our data tests. As mentioned before, our first hypothesis that women MEPs will participate more actively than men was marginally supported. Therefore, we can say that really all 3 of our hypotheses were not supported after our tests. However, we can still make some important conclusions based off of this information. We can perceive the EP to be a viable political institution, considering women MEPs who participate more actively are less likely to pursue national politics. Therefore, we see a sort of motivation of static political ambition where women are trying to climb the proverbial ladder in the hierarchy of the EP and stay in those positions and view them sort of as a high prestige position to begin with. We can also see women consistently participating regardless of age. We don't necessarily see that decline that we saw in men MEPs. Now, despite these conclusions, we still need to run further research. Our N sizes are considerable. However, we do need a more robust population size, considering more than 50% of the MEP during this 7th legislative session is not included in this current data set. By creating a more robust population size, we may find completely different findings, and those different findings will be critical in terms of trying to get this research published in a prestigious European political science journal. And finally, here I have included our working bibliography for this project. Thank you so much for watching and for your attention.